A wildlife success story continues to unfold in Florida. Once on the very brink of extinction, the Florida panther is slowly making a comeback. The progress has been captured in a newly released National Geographic.
There was a time when the Florida panther was only a few steps away from disappearing forever. Only a small number of these big cats were still alive. At the same time, every panther that died brought the species closer to extinction. To stop that from happening, wildlife experts brought 8 Texas Cougars into Florida to breed with just 26 struggling panthers. Many people believed the plan would fail. Others feared it would destroy the Florida panther forever. But what happened next surprised scientists. So, how did this risky plan succeed? Join us in this video as we reveal the details. Florida crossed 8 Texas Cougars with 26 dying panthers. For many years, the Florida panther lived across a large part of the southeastern United States. These powerful wild cats once moved freely through forests, wetlands, and open land without much trouble. They hunted deer, wild pigs, and other animals. They played an important role in keeping nature balanced. But as more people settled across the land, everything slowly began to change. Forests were cut down, roads were built, farms and towns grew larger every year. The panthers slowly lost the places where they could live and hunt. Many of them were also hunted by people. Allegedly, some were attacked because they were seen as dangerous to livestock, while others were hunted simply because they were large predators. Over many years, their numbers continued to fall until almost none were left. By the middle of the 20th century, wildlife experts feared the Florida panther could disappear forever. Hunting was eventually made illegal, but the protection came very late. By then, the damage had already been done. The remaining panthers had become separated from other mountain lion populations. They could no longer move freely to find unrelated mates. Instead, they were forced to breed only with the few panthers still living in South Florida. At first, this problem was not easy to notice. The cats still looked healthy from a distance. They still hunted and raised young, but deep inside their bodies, another danger was growing. Because close relatives kept breeding with each other for many generations, harmful genes slowly became more common. Every new generation inherited more problems than the one before it. Wildlife experts eventually started capturing some of the remaining panthers to examine their health. They collected blood samples, fitted radio collars around their necks, and carefully studied their movements through the swamps and forests. What they discovered shocked almost everyone involved. The cats were not simply few in number. They were becoming unhealthy in many different ways. Many had strange tails that bent sharply near the end. Others had unusual patches of hair growing along their backs. These signs may have looked small, but they pointed to much larger genetic problems hidden inside the animals. Even more worrying were the health problems found inside their bodies. Many male panthers had testicles that failed to develop normally. Some had only one, while others had none at all. This made it much harder for them to produce healthy young. Their sperm counts had also dropped to very low levels, making successful breeding increasingly difficult. Female panthers were also affected. Some were found with small holes inside their hearts that caused unusual heart sounds. Many panthers suffered from weak immune systems, making diseases and parasites much more dangerous than they would normally be. Animals that should have survived ordinary infections often became seriously ill. Scientists realized these were not isolated problems. They were all connected to severe inbreeding. Genetic studies later confirmed that the Florida panther had one of the lowest levels of genetic diversity ever recorded in a large wild mammal. The surviving animals were closely related to one another. Each generation passed the same harmful genes back and forth until the defects became impossible to ignore. The breeding population had become so small that only a handful of females were successfully raising kittens. Even those kittens often died while still very young. Others were born weak or with physical defects that reduced their chances of surviving to adulthood. Allegedly, experts calculated that the population faced an extremely high risk of disappearing completely within only a few decades if nothing changed. This alarming prediction forced scientists, conservation groups, and government agencies to begin discussing solutions that had never before been attempted on such a large wild predator. The situation had become so serious that doing nothing no longer seemed like a safe choice. Every year that passed meant fewer healthy panthers remained alive. Every new litter carried the same harmful genetic problems. Every death reduced the population even further. Wildlife experts understood that protecting habitat alone would no longer save the species. The panthers first needed healthier genes if they were ever going to recover. This realization led to one of the boldest conservation ideas ever proposed. Instead of allowing nature to continue its slow decline, scientists allegedly suggested bringing healthy female mountain lions from Texas into Florida. The hope was that these females would mate with the remaining Florida males and introduce fresh genetic material into the population. Many experts believed this plan offered the last real chance to save the Florida panther from extinction. Others strongly opposed the idea, fearing that introducing outside genes might permanently change the identity of the Florida panther. Could just a few Texas mountain lions really save the Florida panther from extinction? Keep watching for more. The rescue that changed everything. After many months of discussion, wildlife experts finally agreed that the rescue plan should move forward. They believed there was very little time left to save the Florida panther. The remaining population had become too small, and the genetic problems continued to grow worse with every new generation. Allegedly, doing nothing would almost certainly lead to extinction. Because of this, conservation groups, government agencies, and wildlife scientists worked together to begin one of the boldest wildlife rescue efforts ever attempted. The plan was simple in theory, but very risky in practice. Healthy female mountain lions would be brought from Texas and released into South Florida. They would hopefully breed with the remaining Florida panthers and introduce new genetic material into the struggling population. The success or failure of the entire project depended on whether these females could survive, adapt to their new environment, and produce healthy kittens. The task of capturing the animals was given to an experienced mountain lion tracker named Roy McBride. Ironically, McBride had spent much of his early life hunting mountain lions across Texas. Allegedly, he had helped remove many of them during his younger years when ranchers viewed the animals as a threat. Years later, his knowledge of mountain lions made him the best person to help save another population from disappearing forever. He traveled across the rough mountains of West Texas and carefully captured 8 healthy female cougars. Each animal was examined before being prepared for transport. The females were then flown to Florida, where wildlife teams waited for their arrival. One of the first females escaped from her holding enclosure only a day after arriving. Instead of waiting through the planned adjustment period, she ran straight into the wild. Although this unexpected escape worried many officials, she survived on her own for several years before she was eventually found dead after being shot. Allegedly, the identity of the person responsible was never discovered. Sadly, not every Texas cougar survived long enough to help the project. One was attacked by a vehicle while crossing a road. Another was shot while she was carrying unborn kittens. A third female also died under circumstances that were never fully explained. These early losses reduced the number of breeding females from 8 to only 5. Suddenly, the future of the Florida panther depended on just a handful of animals. Wildlife biologists watched closely as the remaining females settled into their new home among the swamps, forests, and wetlands of South Florida. Over time, encouraging signs slowly began to appear. The Texas females successfully mated with Florida panthers. Before long, healthy kittens started to arrive. These young panthers looked very different from many of the kittens born before the rescue. They no longer showed many of the severe physical defects that had become common after generations of inbreeding. Their tails were straighter. Heart problems became much less common. Male kittens developed normally, and their overall health improved greatly. Scientists were encouraged by these changes because they suggested that the new genetic material was working exactly as they had hoped. As the years passed, the benefits became even clearer. The offspring of the Texas females continued breeding with other Florida panthers. spreading healthy genes throughout the population. Genetic diversity increased steadily. Survival rates improved. More kittens lived long enough to become healthy adults. The number of panthers slowly began to rise instead of falling. By the early 2000s, wildlife experts could clearly see that the rescue had changed the direction of the species. Allegedly, scientific studies later confirmed that the panther population had grown several times larger than it had been before the rescue effort began. Signs of inbreeding became far less common, and the animals appeared stronger and healthier overall. Another encouraging sign appeared years later when female panthers with kittens were seen north of the Caloosahatchee River. This was important because the species had not successfully expanded into that area for many decades. It suggested that the growing population was beginning to reclaim parts of its former range. The rescue had not only improved the health of the animals, but had also given them enough strength to spread into new territory once again. Even so, scientists continued studying the population because they understood that no conservation success lasts forever without continued effort. More recent genetic research reportedly showed that modern Florida panthers still kept most of their original ancestry. The Texas Cougars had strengthened the population without completely replacing its unique identity. However, researchers also found that some harmful genetic mutations may have entered the population during earlier introduction. At present, these harmful genes appear to remain mostly hidden because the population still has enough genetic diversity to keep them from causing widespread problems. Even with these improvements, experts warned that the rescue should never be seen as a permanent solution. If the population remains small for many years, inbreeding could slowly return. Some scientists have even suggested that another carefully planned genetic rescue may one day become necessary. Today, however, genetics is no longer considered the greatest danger facing the Florida panther. Roads, traffic, and habitat loss have become much bigger threats. Every year, vehicles take the life of many panthers while they attempt to cross busy highways. At the same time, growing human development continues to reduce the amount of wild land available for the animals to live and hunt. Allegedly, some proposed housing projects could increase traffic enough to place even more pressure on the recovering population. The Florida panther remains one of the world's greatest conservation success stories because it proved that carefully managed genetic rescue can pull a species back from the edge of extinction. The first healthy kittens had finally arrived, but would they truly secure the Florida panther's future? Or was another challenge just beginning? Stay tuned for more. A new generation receives protection. The birth of the first healthy kittens gave scientists new hope. For the first time in many years, they could see signs that the rescue plan was working.
The Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission says the remains of the panther was found last week in south of Dinner Island Ranch Wildlife Management.
The young panthers looked stronger than the animals that had been born before them. They showed fewer physical defects, and many experts believed the future was finally beginning to change. However, this exciting moment also created a new problem that nobody had fully prepared for. These kittens carried genes from both the Florida Panthers and the Texas Cougars. Because of this, some people questioned whether they could still be called Florida Panthers. This was not just a scientific debate, it was also a legal problem that could affect the survival of the entire rescue effort. Allegedly, if the new animals were not officially recognized as Florida Panthers, they might lose the protection provided under federal law. That possibility worried many wildlife experts because the rescue had only just begun. Losing legal protection at such an early stage could have placed the young animals in serious danger. Government officials carefully studied the issue before making a final decision. In 1996, the United States Fish and Wildlife Service officially announced that every hybrid kitten would be treated exactly like a Florida panther under the Endangered Species Act. This protection also covered kittens that had already been born before the decision was published. The ruling removed confusion and gave wildlife officers the legal power to continue protecting every animal produced through the rescue program. With that important question answered, scientists returned their full attention to studying the growing population. As more kittens were born, the results became increasingly encouraging. The first 5 Texas female cougars successfully produced at least 15 kittens. Those young panthers continued breeding with other Florida panthers allowing the healthy genes to spread naturally through the population. Every new generation showed signs of improvement. The unusual kinked tails that had affected most of the old population became extremely rare. Allegedly, within only 10 years, researchers could no longer find the famous tail defect among the hybrid offspring. Other inherited problems also became much less common. The young panthers appeared healthier, stronger, and more active than the generations that had suffered from severe inbreeding. Scientists continued collecting blood samples, monitoring health, and tracking the animals throughout South Florida. The results continued pointing in the same direction. Genetic diversity increased steadily. Kitten survival improved greatly. More young panthers reached adulthood and successfully produced families of their own. Researchers also noticed that the hybrid panthers behaved differently from many of the older animals. They appeared stronger during capture and often escaped situations that the older inbred panthers could not. Allegedly, some scientists even compared their strength and energy to that of powerful athletes because the difference was so noticeable. Every measurement collected during the following years supported the same conclusion. The rescue was working far better than many experts had expected. The project that once divided scientists had now become one of the strongest examples of successful wildlife conservation. By 2003, the remaining Texas female cougars had completed the work they were brought to perform. Their genes had already spread through the growing population, making their continued presence unnecessary. Wildlife officials carefully removed the last surviving females from the Florida wilderness. Even after they were gone, their influence continued through their children, grandchildren, and later generations. The recovery did not stop. Instead, it continued growing stronger. By 2007, wildlife experts estimated that more than 100 Florida panthers were living in the wild. This was an important milestone because the population had more than tripled since the rescue began. Another encouraging event happened years later, when a female panther was found raising kittens north of the Caloosahatchee River. This had not happened for more than 40 years. Scientists believed this showed that the species was beginning to expand into areas where it had disappeared many years earlier. The panthers were no longer surviving only in one small corner of Florida. They were slowly reclaiming parts of their former home. Still, not every Texas cougar shared in this success. One female known as TX104 followed a very different path. She escaped shortly after arriving in Florida before the planned release process had been completed. Although she carried a radio collar and wildlife teams monitored her movements, she never became part of the official breeding records. Allegedly, nobody knows whether she produced any kittens during the years she lived alone in the wild. The rescue was finally showing results, but would the new generation receive the legal protection needed to survive? Let's delve deeper. A successful rescue still faces an uncertain future. As the years passed, scientists noticed that the biggest threat was no longer poor genetics. The panthers were becoming healthier, and more kittens were surviving into adulthood. As more panthers spread across South Florida, they had to travel farther to find food, mates, and new territory. Their search often brought them close to busy highways and growing communities. Every road they crossed became another risk. Every new neighborhood built near their habitat reduced the amount of safe land available for them to live. Allegedly, vehicle collisions soon became the leading cause of death for the recovering population. Wildlife officials recorded dozens of panthers being assassinated by vehicles in a single year. Many of these animals were healthy adults that could have produced more kittens. Every loss slowed the recovery that scientists had worked so hard to achieve. Researchers explained that roads had become one of the greatest dangers because panthers naturally travel long distances. They do not stay in one small area. Young males especially move across large territories while searching for places of their own. Unfortunately, many of these journeys now end on busy highways. Wildlife experts have continued asking for more wildlife crossings, fences, and safer road designs to help reduce these deaths. While some improvements have already been made, many scientists believe much more work is still needed. At the same time, another problem began appearing as the population increased. Years earlier, when very few panthers remained, they rarely met one another because they were spread across the remaining wilderness. As their numbers slowly increased, encounters became much more common. Adult male panthers naturally defend their territory. They do not easily allow other males to enter the same area. When two strong males meet in a place where land and food are limited, serious fights can happen. Allegedly, some of these battles end with one panther attacking another. Scientists explain that this is normal behavior for wild cats. It is not a sign that the rescue failed. Instead, it shows that more healthy animals are trying to survive within the same limited space. As the available habitat becomes smaller, these conflicts are expected to become more frequent. Habitat loss has now become one of the biggest concerns for wildlife experts. Every year, more forests and wetlands are cleared for houses, businesses, roads, and other construction projects. Large areas that once supported wildlife continue disappearing. Conservation groups have repeatedly warned that the Florida panther cannot survive without enough land to hunt, breed, and raise its young. Allegedly, several organizations have gone to court to challenge major development projects planned inside important panther habitat. These groups argue that adding thousands of new homes and many more vehicles could place even greater pressure on a population that is still recovering. Scientists also warn that losing habitat does not only reduce space, it also breaks the landscape into smaller pieces. Panthers then have fewer safe paths to travel between breeding areas, increasing both road deaths and territorial conflicts. Even after the success of the rescue, researchers have continued studying the genetics of the Florida panther. New research published many years after the original rescue brought both encouraging news and fresh concerns. Scientists confirmed that the Texas Cougars did not replace the original Florida panther. Modern panthers still carry most of their original Florida ancestry. This answered one of the biggest fears raised before the rescue began. The unique identity of the Florida panther was not lost. However, researchers also discovered that some harmful genetic mutations entered the population together with the helpful genes. At the moment, these harmful mutations remain mostly hidden because the improved genetic diversity keeps them from causing major health problems. Allegedly, if the population becomes too small again, inbreeding could slowly return, allowing these hidden defects to appear once more. Some scientists believe another carefully planned genetic rescue may eventually become necessary if that happens. Even with these concerns, conservation experts continue to describe the Florida panther rescue as one of the greatest wildlife success stories ever achieved. More than 40 years of research and monitoring have shown that the benefits of genetic rescue can last through many generations. The project is now studied by scientists around the world and has become an important example for saving other endangered species facing severe inbreeding. It proved that carefully adding healthy genes to a struggling population can reverse damage that once seemed impossible to fix. Still, experts continue reminding the public that genetics alone cannot save any species forever. Healthy animals still need healthy forests, clean water, enough food, safe travel routes, and room to expand. Without these things, even the strongest population can begin to decline again. The Florida panther has already escaped extinction once. Allegedly, the greatest lesson from this remarkable recovery is that saving a species does not end when its numbers begin to rise. Real success comes from making sure the population remains healthy, protected, and able to survive on its own for many generations to come. The genetic rescue had succeeded, but could the Florida panther survive the new dangers waiting ahead? Let's find out. The fight to protect the Florida panther's future. The Florida panther has become one of the greatest wildlife success stories in modern history. Many years ago, experts believed this animal would soon disappear forever. The population had become so small that there was little hope left. After many years of careful work, scientists helped the panther recover. The number of animals slowly increased, and the cats became much healthier than before. Even with this success, experts say the work is not over. The biggest danger is no longer the panther's genes. Today, the greatest threat is the loss of safe places where the animals can live. More forests and wetlands continue to disappear as new roads, homes, and businesses are built. At the same time, scientists believe rising sea levels could flood some parts of South Florida in the future. Allegedly, this could force panthers into even smaller areas. As more people move into the region, there will be less space for the animals to hunt, find mates, and raise their young. Scientists also say that one healthy population is not enough to protect the species forever. Almost every wild Florida panther still lives in the same part of South Florida. This means one powerful hurricane, a serious disease, or another major disaster could quickly affect nearly all of them at once. Because of this, wildlife experts want the animals to spread into other safe areas. They believe there should be several healthy populations living in different places. These groups should be connected by protected wildlife paths so the panthers can safely move from one area to another. This would help them find unrelated mates and keep the population healthy for many years. Conservation workers continue building wildlife crossings, protecting natural land, creating safe routes for the animals. They believe these efforts are just as important as the earlier genetic rescue. The story of Roy McBride also remains an important part of this recovery. During his younger years, he was known for hunting mountain lions in West Texas. At that time, many people believed these animals should be removed. Allegedly, he became one of the most experienced cougar hunters in the region. Years later, everything changed. Because he understood mountain lions so well, he was chosen to capture healthy female cougars that would help save the Florida panther. His knowledge became one of the reasons the rescue succeeded. Before he died in 2023, he lived long enough to see the panther population recover. Today, scientists agree that the rescue achieved something many believed was impossible. It showed that a species can recover if people act at the right time. But they also warned that saving the animal was only the first step. The future of the Florida panther now depends on people protecting forests, wetlands, and wildlife corridors. Allegedly, if enough habitat is protected, the panther will continue to grow and spread into new areas. If the habitat continues to disappear, the species could once again face serious danger. After coming so close to disappearing forever, how did the Florida panther survive? And what did people do to give this rare animal a second chance? Let's learn more. The Florida panther's fight for survival. The Florida panther was once very close to disappearing forever. Many years ago, only a few of these big cats were left in the wild. People feared that the animal would soon become extinct.
In the early 80s and 1990s, there were probably only about 20 to 30 Florida panthers left in the wild.
I mean, that's pretty close to extinct.
Yeah, it's about as close as you can get.
Today, there is hope because the number of Florida panthers has slowly increased. This happened because many people worked together for years to protect the animal and the land where it lives. Wildlife experts, photographers, government workers, ranchers, and local communities all played an important part in saving the species. The Florida panther is still very rare. It is also very hard to find because it moves quietly through forests and swamps. Many people call it the ghost cat because it can hide so well. Even people who spend years studying these animals may never see one with their own eyes. Cameras placed deep inside the wild have helped experts learn more about the panther without disturbing it. These cameras have taken many clear pictures that show how the animals live, hunt, and care for their young. Experts say the Florida panther needs a very large area to survive. One male panther may need about 200 square miles of land. This is because the animal needs enough space to hunt for food, find a mate, and raise young. Small pieces of land are not enough. The land must stay connected so the panthers can move safely from one place to another. Because of this, many forests, ranches, farms, and protected lands have been linked together to give wildlife a better chance of survival. Years ago, people hunted Florida panthers because they believed the animals were a danger to farm animals. As more houses, roads, and cities were built, the panthers lost much of their home. Their living space became smaller every year. Today, one of the biggest dangers is traffic. Many panthers die after being hit by vehicles while trying to cross busy roads. Even with these dangers, conservation work has helped the population grow. The number of Florida panthers has increased from only about 20 to 30 animals many years ago to more than 200 today. One female panther became very important after she crossed a river that had stopped female panthers from moving north for many years. She later gave birth to several litters of cubs in her new home. This showed that the animals could safely live and raise young in new areas. Her success gave experts hope that the population could continue to grow. Another important change came from cattle ranchers. Many ranchers now believe that protecting panthers also protects their land from heavy development. They understand that keeping open land helps both farming and wildlife. People also worked together to stop a road that would have damaged important panther habitat. Government leaders from different political groups supported plans to protect connected wild land. What do you think about the recovery of the Florida panthers? Share your thoughts in the comments section below. Thank you for joining us as we explored the incredible journey of the Florida panther and the inspiring efforts to bring this rare animal back from the edge of extinction. If you enjoyed learning about this amazing wildlife success story, please like and subscribe. Click on the next video to discover another fascinating story. See you there.